The air is thick with tension. Police lights strobe across the darkened street, cutting through the night like a blade. The hum of a police helicopter echoes overhead, the whirring of its blades drowning out everything else. Inside a cramped, dimly lit apartment, a young man sits hunched over his computer. Sweat trickles down his face as he stares at the screen, his fingers racing across the keys in a blur of motion. He knows the stakes. Millions of dollars have been siphoned from unsuspecting victims, all by the stroke of his fingers. Tonight, the bill is finally coming due. Outside, the sirens grow louder. The heavy thud of boots on concrete signals the arrival of law enforcement. His heart pounds in his chest as he hits enter one final time, sending his code into the deep recesses of the dark web. It's done. The money is gone, the account's empty, and the FBI is about to breach his door. How did a high school dropout with no formal education rise to become one of the most notorious figures in the world of cybercrime? How did a young man, disillusioned with his life, unlock the door to one of the largest online thefts in history, and ultimately his own personal downfall? It all began in a small town, far from the high-rise buildings of Silicon Valley, in a neighborhood where dreams often faded before they had the chance to take root. As a child, Jason never quite fit in. School was a constant struggle. He couldn't focus on the textbooks that the teachers handed out with so much faith. The noise of classrooms, the rules, the relentless structure, it all suffocated him. He had the spark, though. He had an innate curiosity about technology. The glow of a computer screen was like a beacon to him, his escape from the harsh realities of life. But school never nurtured that spark. Instead, it tried to stamp it out with every failed test and every disappointed teacher. By the age of 16, Jason made his decision. He dropped out of school, his mind made up. There had to be more out there than classrooms and exams. His parents were furious, but he didn't care. He had tasted the sweetness of independence, even if it was a bitter pill. Jason turned to the streets, hustling in whatever way he could. He found work in a local pawn shop, fixing old computers, teaching himself everything he could about hardware and software. But it wasn't enough. He needed more power, more control, more money. Then, one fateful evening, while scouring a dark web forum, he stumbled across a group of hackers known for orchestrating large-scale cybercrimes. They were in the business of stealing millions from unsuspecting victims, manipulating the stock market, draining bank accounts, and covering their tracks so well that no one ever suspected them. Jason was captivated. He could feel the pull of the forbidden knowledge in the digital world. They were the masters, and he wanted to be one of them. It was here, in this virtual underworld, that Jason saw his chance to not only prove his worth, but to create a life for himself, a life beyond the struggles he had endured in his small town. Over the next several months, Jason honed his skills. He learned how to bypass firewalls, how to code malicious software, how to manipulate systems undetected. He became a ghost in the digital world, invisible and untouchable. But Jason wasn't just an ordinary hacker. He was different. His talent, his intuition, made him an asset to the group. He was quick, smart, and fearless. And soon he was leading his own operations, scamming millions out of online systems, money laundering, and selling stolen data. It was all so easy at first. The money started rolling in. Jason upgraded his lifestyle, from the dingy apartment to a sleek modern loft in the city. He bought new clothes, a luxury car, and more technology than anyone could ever need. He was living the dream, or so he thought. But the deeper Jason delved into the cybercrime world, the more dangerous it became. What began as a thrill, an adrenaline rush, soon turned into an obsession. Every day, every heist, the stakes got higher, the risks greater. And with each success came the inevitable question: how long could he keep it up before someone noticed? How long before the walls closed in? By the time he realized the gravity of what he was doing, it was too late. He had already crossed the point of no return. Jason's rise was meteoric. The group of hackers he had aligned himself with, known as the Ghost Syndicate, was feared in the underground world. They were a tight-knit crew of digital thieves, working together to pull off heists so intricate and sophisticated that even the best cybersecurity firms couldn't track them down. Their biggest job came in the summer of 2014, when Jason masterminded an attack on one of the largest financial institutions in the world. The plan was simple but bold. They were going to drain millions from unsuspecting accounts, manipulate currency exchanges, and create a fake, untraceable cryptocurrency that would leave no trace. It was a carefully orchestrated operation that spanned months. Jason led the charge, developing complex algorithms, deploying malware, and coordinating the team's actions with military precision. The payout was massive. The financial institution lost nearly $500 million in the blink of an eye. For a brief moment, Jason thought he had made it. The money he made from the heist alone was enough to retire from the game, enough to live comfortably for the rest of his life. But that thought was fleeting. Soon after the attack, Jason's life began to unravel. The pressure, the constant fear of being caught began to take a toll. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't trust anyone. His paranoia grew, and his relationships with those around him became increasingly strained. He started to isolate himself, disappearing for days at a time, checking the news obsessively to see if anyone had uncovered the operation. And then, one fateful day, the unthinkable happened. Jason's computer was compromised. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Jason's world began to collapse. He had just finished executing another round of transactions when a strange notification appeared on his screen. At first it seemed innocuous, just another alert about his system's security, something he had long since grown numb to. But then the message changed. Access detected. Intruder alert. His pulse quickened. The message wasn't just a standard security warning. It was a direct hit. Someone had breached his firewall and they were coming for him. Jason's heart raced as he scrambled to track the source of the intrusion. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he tried to disable the backdoor entry. But every time he thought he was in control, the system slipped further away from his grasp. This wasn't just a hacker trying to steal data. It felt personal. It was as if someone knew exactly who he was, where he was, and what he had done. In a blind panic, Jason tried to disconnect his internet, but it was too late. The intruder had already taken control. His screens flickered, and his once pristine digital world began to crack. Files were being deleted at an alarming rate, and his encrypted files, his lifeblood, the stolen money, the secret identities of those he had betrayed, were disappearing. He knew who was behind this. The Ghost Syndicate. They had finally come for him. For months, Jason had been at the top of his game, but now he was nothing more than a liability. The crew no longer trusted him. They saw him as a potential weak link. As the digital heist grew bigger and the law closed in, Jason's once loyal crew turned their back on him. His paranoia reached new heights. He could no longer trust anyone. Jason knew that if the authorities weren't already on his trail, they would be soon. He could feel the walls closing in. He tried to disappear, fleeing to an isolated cabin in the mountains, far away from the reach of the authorities. But Jason quickly realized that there was nowhere to hide. His name was already on the radar, his digital fingerprints all over the massive theft. It wasn't just the Ghost Syndicate anymore, it was everyone. Jason was the face of a new kind of crime. He had become a symbol of the dangers lurking in the shadows of the internet. But the most terrifying realization of all, Jason didn't even know who he was running from anymore. The authorities? His former comrades? The millions of victims whose lives he had wrecked? The lines blurred, and Jason began to question if he could ever outrun his past. Weeks went by in isolation, with Jason's mind spiraling further. His life was a series of broken links, shattered by every decision, every click, every line of code he had written in pursuit of power and wealth. The final blow came one cold, unforgiving morning. Jason woke up to the harsh ring of his phone. The voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm, as if the speaker already knew everything about him, every action he had taken, every step he had made. It was the FBI. "Jason, we know what you've done. We've been tracking you for months. You can either make this easy, or we can make it difficult. But one way or another, you're going down." Jason had always thought he could outsmart the authorities. He had spent years slipping through cracks in the system, using the internet as his cloak of invisibility. But now there was no escape. They had him cornered, his heart hammered in his chest as the realization hit. This was it. The end of the road, the fall from grace. In that moment, Jason thought about everything he had lost. The money, the fame, the rush, it all seemed so hollow. He had traded his humanity for power, for an illusory sense of control. But what was the point of all that wealth if you couldn't trust anyone? What was the point if you had to live in constant fear of being exposed? The FBI agent continued speaking, but Jason barely heard the words anymore. He had reached the moment of reckoning, the moment where his actions had caught up with him, and there was no more room to run, no more lies to tell. In the end, Jason was arrested, tried, and sentenced for his role in orchestrating one of the largest cybercrimes in history. The story of his rise and fall became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition in the digital age. But it wasn't just the authorities who came for him. His former crew, the Ghost Syndicate, had no mercy. They made sure Jason knew that in the world of cybercrime, betrayal had its price. Jason was left to rot, abandoned by everyone he had once trusted. Jason's story wasn't just about the money he stole or the lives he destroyed. It was about the fragility of trust, the illusion of control, and the price of crossing lines that could never be uncrossed.